Now please welcome to the stage Tyrone King, our next step participant.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you guys doing today? Good morning. It's spring. Technically it's spring. Might not feel like it, but it's good to know it's here. Yeah, so I'm glad to be here this morning. I once knew a guy. He did about 30 years in prison. And when he got home, he went to a department store and he picked up a brick and he threw it right through the window. And he sat right there and waited for the police to arrive. And when the cops came, they asked him, they said, "Why did you do this?" And he looked at him and said, I don't know anything about this world out here. Nothing makes sense. Take me back to prison where things make sense. And it was heartbreaking, because I knew the guy pretty good, and I can really relate to what he was feeling at that time. Because after coming home about 1 year and 11 months ago, after doing 28 straight years behind prison walls, I had a lot of those feelings inside as well. So I totally understand where he was coming from. But during those 28 years behind penitentiary and prison walls, it was God's grace that kept me, and it was only God's grace. It was God's grace that's keeping me now in my transition in this new world. His grace in prison, when my family passed, it was hard. I was a mother's boy. I loved my mother. I had a lot of women in my family. Father died when I was little, so my grandmother, my mother, my aunt, they were like my support, my network. They told me how to do right from wrong as a child, how to go to church, those kinds of things, and how to excel in school and all those kinds of things. So I was very close to them. And when I was in prison, all I ever wanted to do when I get out, one of the main things was to make it out before my mom passed, before my brother passed, before my grandmother passed, and when they all passed, during those 28 years, it was hard. A lot of you guys out here, when someone passed, you have a support network. They come over and they give you a hug, you go to the funeral, all these kinds of things. You have an outlet, kind of, deal with it. But when you're in an environment like I was in, where you're trapped in those prison walls in an aggressive environment, bunch of gladiators just, it's tough, because you don't want to cry. You don't want to let your emotions out because, it's not the type of environment. So I sat in those cells dealing with it. And then I tried to go to the funerals. I couldn't go to the funerals of my mom. I couldn't go to the funerals of my brother. And you talking about being rock bottom. During those times, it was hard. When my brother died, I contemplated suicide. And I never thought that would happen. But when I was laying on that concrete floor in that prison cell and about to commit suicide, a letter slid up under the prison door by one of the guards, and it was from my mother. She was already dying of cancer, but she said, "Hold on, you're all I have left." And that right there got me off that prison floor. And I said, I can't do this. I'm all my mother has left. Just lost my brother, and he was only 30, and it was hard. But it got me that much closer into God, what do you have for me? And it really got me into a much deeper relationship with God. When you're dealing with prison, it's an abnormal environment, so I had to deal with a lot of things in that type of environment. And on top of that, all of my family support was gone. So I was looking forward, I was 21 when I got incarcerated, so I was looking forward to one day when I get released, I can be with my family and I have that support and they will help me. So that was all gone. See, the two biggest fears that most prisoners have, men prisoners, one is that you don't want to die in there. You don't want to die alone behind those concrete walls. I said, God, don't let me die in here, because I had 72 years. 21 when I went in, I said, God, I don't want to die. Second greatest fear, God, please don't let my mother, my grandmother, if you have kids or whatever, don't let them die before I get home. Let them live to see me make it. Let them live to see me strive to make them proud. Let them see the transformation and the change And that was one of the biggest fears. And so that God's grace got me through that. So when I came home, it was a challenge. He got me through those times. It's God's grace that's keeping me right now. It was God's grace that sent me people like Samaritan Ministry of Greater Washington to help me navigate through this difficult new world. I never saw a smartphone for one. When I got home, I never saw. I remember when it was placed in my hand, I was like, wow. You know, I was trying to text, right? And every time I text, I would hit one letter, and then another letter would pop up. And I would call people and say, what is this stupid stuff? I'm trying to hit the A and the B. What is? You'll get used to it, Tyrone. Just take your time. You know, never saw the internet. So I was like, well, because I heard a lot about the internet, you know. I didn't know what a link was, nor did I know how to send a link, you know. Went to the bank to open up a banking account, right? I never forget, he said, you need a password and a username. So a friend of mine went with me. I said, what is a password and a username? Because I didn't want the guy to know I was incarcerated at the bank, just getting home 5 days ago. Tyrone, just give him some letters. You need like some letters. So I gave him some letters, and that's not strong enough. Try throwing some symbols and some numbers. What the world? I'm giving you some numbers. But it was hard. But it was a new world, and it was difficult. But now, thanks to all the support that I have, from Samaritan Ministry and the great people in my life, God has blessed my life. I have a great job now, making a living wage, great benefits, 401k, dental, vision, and all those kind of things that I dreamed about when I was a young man, Yeah, thanks be to God. God's grace, y'all. God's grace. So yeah, God's grace got me through all of that. Samaritan Ministry was a great asset because when I came home, they got me involved in the Strive program. I don't know how many of you all are familiar with the Strive program, but it was a great program that taught me all the soft skills that I needed to land, great, decent jobs, cover letters, resumes, how to do great interviews. And I give kudos to Strive. I give kudos to Samaritan Ministry for introducing me to Strive. But most of all, I give thanks for God's grace for sending the Samaritan Ministry to me, for helping me to transform my life and to do great. So today, like I said, I got a great job. I own my own home in a great neighborhood. That's a blessing. That's a blessing. I thank God's grace, you all. God's grace, But, in the future, I just hope to continue to basically be an advocate, for prisoners who are returning citizens who are just coming home. I'm also currently putting some ideas together to become a public author and to write a book, on, for returning citizens, making that transition, coming home, the difficulties that they face, the changes and challenges that their family faces. Because a lot of people think that, oh, my dad is coming home, it's going to be just like it was or better, or my son is coming home. But what they don't realize, there's going to be a lot of challenges because when you're doing decades in prison, it's a mental thing. It's a mental thing. And one of the hardest parts about doing time like that behind those prison walls, you have to be strong mentally, because especially when you're doing solitary confinement, 23 hours in a cell, months, years at a time. Now, you have to crack that Bible open, and that's what I did. I had to pray. I had to find something bigger than me. I was at rock bottom, so I had to find, I couldn't do nothing but look up. And I said, Mom, you were right. All the years of my life as a child, when you sent me to those education Bible schools in the summertime, and you made me go to church, and you made me get involved and put me into the Boy Scouts, and you tried to instill all those things into me. I see it now. I see it now, and it's only by God's grace. I don't regret the things I've experienced because it made me who I am today. It took hell to make me into the man that I am today. With God, all things are possible, you guys. With God, all things are possible. Thank you guys for listening, and you guys have a great one. God's grace. God's grace.